Good evening, everybody. Welcome back from dinner. Thank you for coming back on time. Sometimes that's difficult. There's nice restaurants in town. You don't want to leave. You got margaritas. All right. Our keynote speaker for tonight, I'm going to tell you a little kind of behind-the-scenes funny story. Her and I were texting a month or so ago, a couple weeks ago, I guess, and she was telling me how much she loved the way I introduced her last year, and could I do a wonderful job like that again? I'm like, so I texted her back the truth. I go, Linda, I don't remember a damn thing about what I said last year. I don't. So, being the consummate professional, she said, can't you get a DVD of the... All right, so I did. Nancy was kind enough to bring a DVD from the speech last year, and I put it in and I watched it, and here's what I was going to do to you, okay? What I was going to do is have them play that introduction off the DVD, and then I was going to give you the classic Lou introduction, okay? How many of you have ever seen Lou Farish introduce Linda at this conference? Okay, I guess this is how it would go. Now, this isn't the real introduction, okay? He would get up here with his ball cap on, and he would go, if you don't know Linda, I don't know what to tell you. Here's Linda, and that's it. Now, you don't understand. Her rap sheet would take me a half an hour to read. Okay, seriously, it's just unbelievable. Okay, so I'm going to give you some highlights, all right? So our keynote speaker tonight, graduate of Stanford University with a master's in communication. She has devoted her film career, her documentary, television, radio career to writing and producing productions that are concerned with science, medicine, the environment, okay? She's received local, national, international awards, including 3 regional Emmys, a national Emmy nomination, and a WCVB Boston Station Peabody Award for medical and scientific programming. This is the real McCoy when it comes to the media and the kind of knowledge and education that we get from that. She is as good as it gets in this field, and she has devoted much of her life to learning about this phenomenon and helping to educate us on what she has found out. She produces reports, edits the award-winning Science, Environmental, Earth Mysteries news website, earthfiles.com, which was honored with a Web Award for News Standard of Excellence, a W3 Silver Award in the news category, and an Award of Standard of Excellence presented by the Internet's Web Award Association and Encyclopedia Britannica Award for Journalistic Excellence. Now, this is the kind of credibility that ufology needs, and Linda brings it in spades. Her name's not really Lisa. I don't know where that came from. Her monthly 3-hour news report about science, environment, and earth mysteries are broadcast on premier radio networks, Coast to Coast AM, throughout North America. She also produces radio broadcasts for Whitley Strieber's Dreamland Online. She has written 4 books, Mysterious Lights and Crop Circles, and Alien Harvest, Glimpses of Other Realities, Volume 1 and 2. If you don't have these books, try and figure out a way to get them. They are hard to get sometimes.
No, they're always available at earthfiles.com.
Excellent. Because I just had I had an old Victorian home, and I lost another 100 books or so with a watery basement, and one of them was one of your books. So we'll talk.
I'll give you one.
All right. She has spoken at more conferences, TV shows, radio shows than you can possibly imagine. I mean, thousands and thousands of times. I do not know anybody who cares more about this planet and the crazy people that live on it than our next speaker, and I mean that. She has devoted her entire life to taking care of this planet, finding out the truth, and telling everybody else that will possibly listen what she knows. For me, whenever I first met Linda, she was one of these people where when you meet somebody, there's this instant connection, you know, and I'd look at her and go, oh, you and I have been friends for thousands of years, haven't we?
Yeah.
Okay, that's the kind of feeling. So I am very, very proud to be Linda's friend, and I am very proud now to introduce her to present to you, Linda Moulton Howe.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I feel that I'm in a room with people that I literally have known for almost 30 years coming to Eureka Springs. And tonight, I'm going to be doing something I've not done before in 2 hours, weaving a complexity. And I am looking forward to your feedback about this, because we are in a very, very strangely, I think, difficult, critical time. And I want to thank Nancy Vernon, Julia B., Shonda and Christy Garrison, Race and Robin Hobbs, and all who have produced another year. They told me this is officially the 29th year, counting the non-Lou Farish at the beginning. And that I know in my very first year, I think it was 88 or 89, I was here and I presented that year about my investigations of the worldwide animal mutilations and why law enforcement said that the perpetrators were, quote, creatures from outer space, close quote. And now we have rovers exploring on Mars. We have spacecraft showing us the first close-up images of Pluto's icy mountains and the bright white magnesium salt deposits in the crater on the dwarf planet Ceres, and news that at the bottom of the 30-mile deep ocean on Saturn's moon Enceladus, there is hot water at nearly 200 degrees Fahrenheit gushing from the sea floor and spouting through the surface ice, apparently heated by radioactive material in the core. That provokes scientists to wonder if there really are swimming creatures in that surprisingly warm moon water. As the future rushes toward us with a persistent mixture of lies and truths, I would like to sharpen the focus on what was happening 69 years ago when the front page of the Roswell Daily Record on July 8, 1947 was headlined, quote, Roswell Army Airfield captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell region. No details of flying disc are revealed. We now know that during a thunderstorm late at night on July 3-4, 1947, 3 aerial objects merged on radar before 3 crash sites were found. The headline about one came from Colonel William Blanchard, commanding officer of the 509th Bomb Wing at the Roswell Army Airfield. Colonel Blanchard ordered his public information officer, Walter Hott, to issue a press release announcing that one of those flying saucers people had been reporting that summer had crashed northwest of Roswell near Corona. Strange debris had been found by sheep rancher Mac Brazel on July 4th. 3 days later, on July 7th, the head of the Roswell Army Airfield's 509th Bomber Group Intelligence Unit, Lieutenant Colonel Jesse Marcel Sr., went to the Brazel Ranch with Counterintelligence Corps agent Sheridan Cabot to investigate and gather up peculiar silver foil that folded like cloth and long, thin I-beams with purple symbols on them. The next day, on July 8th, after the story broke on the front page of the Roswell Daily Record, the head of the 8th Air Force in Fort Worth, Texas, Brigadier General Roger Ramey, held a press conference with his chief of staff, Colonel Thomas Dubose, to falsely say there was no flying saucer. It was just a weather balloon that exploded in the thunderstorm. And to strengthen his phony story, General Ramey had pieces of shredded weather balloons spread on the floor to be photographed so newspapers would run with his concocted story, specifically to keep the public and the media from knowing about the alien presence. Even Lieutenant Colonel Jesse Marcel Sr. was asked to fly from Roswell to Fort Worth to pose for photos amid weather balloon debris. But Colonel Marcel knew that what he had gathered the day before from the Brazel Ranch was not a weather balloon. 5 years later, in 1952, President Truman's Majestic 12 Special Panel said in their first annual report about the retrieval of, quote, unidentified plan-form space vehicles, radar film and tower logs do not explain the merging of 3 radar targets prior to collision and subsequent crashes. There were 5 recovered bodies, and recovered is misspelled in the original report, 2 of which were found in a severely damaged escape cylinder, and the remaining 3 bodies were found some distance away from the cylinder. All 5 appeared to have suffered from sudden decompression and heat suffocation, and that's also misspelled in the original. So there were 3 radar targets and 3 crash sites. Landing zone 1 was near Corona, about 75 miles north of Roswell. An interplanetary phenomenon unit summary on July 22nd, 1947, in paragraph 12 states, quote, the most disturbing aspect of this investigation was there were other bodies found not far from LZ-1, landing zone 1, that looked as if they had been dissected as you would a frog, close quote. Without explaining whether the bodies referenced were animal, human, or alien. Animal parts were reportedly discovered inside the craft at Landing Zone 2. Landing Zone 2, here's Oscura Peak. Here's the Trinity site where the atomic bomb was tested in the middle of July 1945, 2 years before. This is Landing Zone 2 was between them. Here's Socorro up here. And part of this whole issue of Landing Zone 2 being where animal parts were reportedly found inside a well-preserved capsule. Here's the thinking. A bigger craft crashes here. An escape pod that seemed to be described in more than one case of extraterrestrial craft over the decades may have projected here. So this may be that where they found the animal parts reportedly inside a well-preserved capsule along with bodies of aliens, it may have been projected from here to there. And Landing Zone 3 was yet another craft. This one, I talked with somebody who had talked with some people back in the 40s, and they said that this appeared to have gone straight in and it was kind of crumpled, whereas this, the original craft, and this seemed to be very well preserved. Now, the reference to plan form in the Majestic 12 Project's first annual report in 1952 meant a delta or crescent shape like the heel of a shoe, which is the shape in this photograph taken over Phoenix, Arizona on July 7th, 1947, the same week as the Roswell crashes. A lot of people didn't realize that this was happening at the same time. The box camera photo was by William A. Rhodes, who had been a flight instructor during World War II at Falcons Field in Phoenix. 2 days later, on Wednesday, July 9th, 1947, the Arizona Republic in Phoenix put the Rhodes photograph of the crescent-shaped aerial planform on its front page upside down. This same planform shape has been described and sketched by other retired military eyewitnesses for me that's very, very similar to when this is uprighted, that you see that the crescent-shaped planform, like this. General Ramey's goal was to carry out orders for a strict policy of denial and secrecy for the deeply concerned President Harry Truman Allegedly, Truman and FDR had already dealt with a UFO and 3 identical dead aliens 6 full years before. In a new book, Mo 41, The Bombshell Before Roswell, author Paul Blake Smith writes that on the night of April 12, 1941, a crescent-shaped UFO crashed near Cape Girardeau, Missouri. Cape Girardeau is about 115 miles from St. Louis, southeast. Right in here is a little town called Chaffee, and this was, the actual crash site was about 8 miles south of Cape Girardeau, near Chaffee. And the area in here, this was in 1941, it was just nothing but farmland, cows, and horses. And the Missouri Institute for Aeronautics was based here in Sikeston. And they were associated with an Army unit that allegedly retrieved this crescent-shaped craft and the 3 identical small bodies that were described by people who were there firsthand, not from this world. And the fact that, as Paul Blake Smith said, that people said that the 3 bodies that were seen by a reverend were identical as if they had been made by a cookie cutter, today we would call them clones. One MJ-12 document leaked in the 1990s to aerospace engineer Dr. Bob Wood is entitled MJ-12 Project White Hot Intelligence, Estimate Preliminary, dated September 19, 1947, only 2.5 months after the Roswell region's UFO crashes. Classified Magic Eyes Only, Part 3, Scientific Probability states, quote, based on all available evidence collected from recovered exhibits, the plan-form UFOs, currently under study by, and it lists 11 government and military agencies and MIT, those craft are deemed extraterrestrial in nature. This conclusion was reached as a result of comparisons of artifacts from the Missouri discovery in 1941, meaning Cape Girardeau. So they were referencing Cape Girardeau in the documents after the 1947 Roswell crashes, which means that the FDR, Truman, at the end of FDR's administration and the beginning of the Truman, they were talking with each other as 33rd degree Masons about extraterrestrials, creatures from another world, and craft retrievals, and as good 33rd degree Masons, they were not going to let that information out to the public, and that is, I think, where the strong policy of denial began even before we were actively in World War II. Based on the available evidence, Part 2, Technical Evaluation, paragraph 18 states, quote, the following elements were analyzed and found to exist in the small neutronic power plant that was found inside of U-Lot 1. Now, U-Lot 1 is another acronym for UFO plan form, and this one stands for Unidentified Lenticular-Shaped Aerodyne. You will find these references to U-Lot 1, aerodyne, and lenticular in several of the legitimate documents that go back to the 40s. Even the recovery case of 1941, meaning Cape Girardeau, Missouri, did not create a unified intelligence effort to exploit possible technological gains, with the exception of the Manhattan Project. And the reference to the Manhattan Project means physicist Robert Oppenheimer had the Cape Girardeau neutronic power plant to study during his development of the atomic bomb, first dropped on Japan in August 1945, ending World War II. That also implies that Presidents Roosevelt and Truman already knew about this alien presence during World War II, before the July 1947 Roswell crashes, and that they had made this decision to keep everything secret about UFOs and ETs that they had retrieved, by then both dead and alive. Much of the content in those early reports was drawn from what Lieutenant General Nathan Twining discovered on his secret mission for President Truman soon after the New Mexico crashes. That is when General Twining viewed the 5 alien bodies and craft found at Landing Zone 2 near Oscura Peak and the Trinity site. In 1947, General Twining was commander of the Air Materiel Command, and 10 years later, President Eisenhower would appoint him chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. By July 16, 1947, only 1 week after the Roswell Daily headline, General Twining sent President Truman a 2-page report about what he himself saw at the Landing Zone 2 crash site near Oscura Peak on the White Sands Proving Ground. Quote, "Upon examination of the interior of the craft, a compartment exhibiting a possible atomic engine was discovered. In the power room was a donut-shaped tube approximately 35 feet in diameter, made of what appears to be a plastic material that is surrounding a central core. This tube was translucent, approximately 1 inch thick," another misspelling. "The tube appeared to be filled with a clear substance, possibly a heavy water. This activation of electrical potential is believed to be the primary power to the reactor, though it is only a theory at present. Just how a heavy water reactor functions in this environment is unknown. On the deck of the power room, there are what resembles typewriter keys, possibly reactor power plant controls. There were no conventional electronics nor wiring to be seen connecting these controls to the propulsion turret." And I have been told that those keys, by somebody who saw this report and had firsthand knowledge, said there were strange hieroglyphic type symbols on all of these keys. The 1952 MJ-12 First Annual Report said, quote, "The technology may be eons ahead of us," meaning thousands of years beyond us on Earth. This is 2 weeks after the retrieval in July of 1947. Another military insider from World War II and the Eisenhower and Kennedy presidencies did a 1997 book, the day after Roswell, about what he knew firsthand of UFO extraterrestrial technologies and ETs while working in the Pentagon. Lieutenant Colonel Philip J. Corso worked as chief of the Pentagon's Foreign Technology Desk for General Arthur Trudeau, who was handpicked by President Dwight Eisenhower in 1958 to be the first director of Army Research and Development in the Pentagon. And as Corso told me before he died, that he personally had talked with General Trudeau about the friendship with then General Eisenhower during the war, who became president, and that General Eisenhower and Trudeau had formed a friendship, and that the president, Eisenhower, trusted General Trudeau as Army and was especially respectful because he was the only PhD in engineering that was serving in the Army at the time, and that is why Eisenhower picked him. General Trudeau, on the right, who then handpicks Colonel Corso because they had been together in one of the war missions in Italy. And so Trudeau trusted Corso. And Colonel Corso told me that he met with General Trudeau in the Pentagon office, where the general went over to a file drawer. There were actually 2 file drawers, and handed over what the general told Colonel Corso were extraterrestrial artifacts retrieved from crashed or landed UFOs. The general asked Colonel Corso, they're in the Pentagon with their hands on these artifacts in these drawers, to secretly hand-deliver these ET artifacts to selected contacts in a few American corporations. General Trudeau and President Eisenhower wanted the ET technologies back engineered and patented as a top secret national security priority. No one in Congress, no one in the Supreme Court, and no one in the tax-paying American public was to know anything ever. General Trudeau and Colonel Corso were the beginning of the United States' serious efforts to develop a secret space program that would use retrieved, back-engineered extraterrestrial technology for advancement. Meanwhile, NASA, under CIA control, would be the public camouflage for what was behind the scenes, a dark and growing underbelly of America, spending trillions of secret dollars, but unknown and untouchable. In June 1997, Time magazine did a cover story on the 50th anniversary of the Roswell crashes. I was there to speak for that 50th commemoration. And there I met and talked with Colonel Corso for the first time about his work for General Trudeau. When Colonel Corso was introduced to me, he extended his hand to shake mine and he said, "How the hell did you get so much classified information?" And he meant the animal mutilations that I had investigated for my TV documentary, A Strange Harvest, that first broadcast May 28, 1980 on Denver's CBS station KMGH-TV, where I was director of special projects. That's when sheriffs and ranchers told me the perpetrators of the bloodless, trackless animal deaths were, quote, creatures from outer space, close quote. I heard that from several people in law enforcement, but they would not stand up in front of my camera and go on the record. Ranchers had seen glowing lights in night skies emit beams down into their pastures. A few had even seen a cow lifted up in a beam of light or lowered in a beam of light to pastures, dead and mutilated. But none of those eyewitnesses would stand in front of my TV camera for fear of ridicule. Before he died, Colonel Corso talked to me in private about the highly classified documents that he had read in Washington, D.C., dated as early as 1951, about animals found in several parts of the world with bloodless excisions and no tracks around them. Colonel Corso said the classified reports that he read specified that the perpetrators of animal mutilations were, quote, extraterrestrial biological entities, close quote. But why? This illustration is by a Missouri horse rancher in 1975 who saw this glowing being at his gate during a time when he found several newborn foals and young horses bloodlessly mutilated in his pasture. Eventually, our government would realize that many of the UFO pilots and other non-human entities were cloned androids or human ET hybrids produced from genetic harvests of Earth life, including animal mutilations and human sperm and egg extractions. Our government, according to Colonel Corso, learned that in spite of the mutilations and abductions, some ETs are friendly and want humanity to advance faster, to be more protected from unfriendly ETs. So there was urgency in General Trudeau's goal to get alien technologies back engineered and patented as fast as possible to keep them from Germany and Russia, and to support a secret space program that might have to do battle in real Star Wars. About secret ET technology transfer to American corporations for back engineering and patents, Colonel Corso wrote, quote, General Trudeau also had relationships with the Army contractors who were developing new weapon systems for the military within one part of the company, while another part was harvesting some of the same ET technology for consumer product development. These were companies such as Bell Labs, IBM, Monsanto, Dow, RCA that became General Electric, and the aviation and medical companies of Howard Hughes, close quote. Probably trillions of dollars made on subjects that have been denied our knowledge, but our tax dollars have helped pay for the black underbelly. At that July 1997 50th anniversary conference, Dr. Jesse Marcel Jr. handed me this replica of the thin I-beam he remembered holding in the first week of July 1947. That's when his father, Jesse Marcel Sr., the head of intelligence at the Roswell Army Airfield, woke up Jesse and his mother to show them pieces of the strange silver foil and I-beams that Jesse Marcel Sr. had picked up at one of the 3 UFO crash sites that first week in July 1947, and that was the one between Roswell and Corona. Jesse Marcel Sr. said the metallic foil was like cloth that could be folded or crumpled up, but would always open back up and return to its original flat, unwrinkled shape. It was the Marcel description of something that looked like metal, but folded like a cloth, that I've always remembered. Jesse Jr. told me his father said that night with his mom, quote, "This debris is not of this earth," close quote. Young Jesse Marcel was most curious about what he described as metallic pinkish purple hieroglyphs or symbols that ran along the entire length of a tan-colored I-beam only 3/8 of an inch wide. The I-beam was so lightweight that Jesse Jr. told me when we were at the citizens' hearing in 2013, we were talking about this again, and he said that he remembered holding the I-beam and it was so light he could see it was on his hand, but he couldn't feel it on his hand. He said it was like just putting my hand in air. Plastics did not exist publicly in 1947, but eyewitnesses would later on compare the I-beams to a new lightweight plastic or balsa wood. There were rumors that scientists had discovered the I-beams were an exotic hybrid of metal like wood. It could not be cut or burned. Intelligence officer Jesse Marcel Sr. would himself compare the strange pink-purple symbols to, quote, indecipherable Chinese writing, close quote. And 12 years after the 1947 Roswell UFO cover-up began, Brigadier General Stephen Lufkin has said that he was briefed at the Pentagon in 1959 about the Roswell UFO crashes, and he was shown thin I-beams with what he called purplish encryptions, was the word they were using by then, and that means encoding messages or information in such a way that only authorized parties can read it. Another source, Steve Lytle, reported that his mathematician father was asked by government authorities to decipher the I-beam symbols, but no one was able to. And those were not the only mysterious symbols to show up on UFOs. In 1803, on the east coast of Japan, in the Hitachi province, fishermen reported that a pale, red-headed, alien-looking woman suddenly emerged from under the ocean waters in a round craft that had symbols on its surface. The woman was inside the craft, clutching a box. Eyewitnesses called her Utsuro Bune, meaning ship hole, because her sea craft was shaped like a rice bowl. People who saw the craft said the top was like glass or crystal. When the red-haired woman spoke, it was in a language that no Japanese person had ever heard before. What language was she speaking? Where did she come from? What was in that box? Nobody knows. Eyewitnesses claimed the same red-haired woman and craft were reported in other parts of Japan as if she were flying around in the craft. She was always reported to be tightly holding this box. 177 years later on December 26, 1980, after midnight, Staff Sergeant James Peniston at RAF Bentwaters Woodbridge in England would also encounter a strange craft with symbols in Rendlesham Forest. When Sergeant Peniston dragged his fingers over the symbols, his mind was filled with zeros and ones of binary code and telepathic impressions of a time machine from a distant future where an advanced civilization was dying out. Its mission was to harvest genetic material from Earth to use as band-aids to extend the future civilization's survival. There was no pilot. The triangular craft operated with alien self-activating software. Now here is a comparison. Rendlesham Forest, triangle, vertex, circle, this circle. Here is 1803, triangle, circle here, 2 circles here. These red circles I put on there so you'd see this is where they are in the writing that was written down and has been part of Japanese UFO lore since 1803. So that means that spanning a lot of decades, that we're beginning to sometimes see patterns that resemble. And a year later, on August 28, 1991, 11 years after Sergeant Peniston touched the symbols on the alien craft in the Rendlesham Forest, Soviet authorities were tracking a UFO on a zigzag course at 4,225 miles an hour. The rapid radar track vanished over Kyrgyzstan. A year later, in June 1992, a search party found a cylinder-shaped craft with strange green symbols on it. The investigators reported, quote, powerful electromagnetic field emanating from the wreckage, close quote. All photographs and videotape recordings were overexposed. The craft had crashed in the Shaitan Mazar Gorge, also known as the Devil's Grave, in the central Tian Shan Mountains of eastern Kyrgyzstan. And then, 14 years after that, in late June 2015, an Army sergeant with his wife, 2 young children, dog and a cat, began moving from, I want to make sure I say it, Richmond Hill, Georgia, very near Savannah, on their way to go to Fort Carson in Colorado. And this was going to be generally their route right here. He's a very intelligent, very responsible Army sergeant, I know what his general work is, and he's very familiar and works with them all the time. This is very important. The GPS is part of his daily life. And he sets the family truck's GPS for the route, and they plan to travel at night when it was cooler with less traffic and stay in motels during the day. The husband, who I'm calling Sergeant CJ with his permission, because he's active Army, he wants to understand what is happening to him. The man is really living a schizophrenic life of strict Army and having what we're now going to unfold. So I am honoring everything about him, but I've seen his DD-214, I have seen a lot of documents on this man, and I've talked with his wife. Well, they start off, this is where they want to go. And between here and there, something weird, really weird happens. He and his wife are both shocked when this comes down out of the sky in front of their truck. And he estimated that he is looking at something that is 820 feet long, that's nearly 3 football fields, and nearly 200 feet high vertically. It has, he said there were bright white sparks that were projected out beyond the craft, front and back. He couldn't understand. He said, when I sketched it, it's wrong. He said, I sketched it like it's coming. He said that the sparks were not connected to this strange, gigantic disc. And he did not, he couldn't understand what he was looking at. And then he and his wife both noticed that there are these 5 symbols right here below the midline. He told me, he said, in the Army, I'm a trained observer. I've been a trained observer for 15 years. I'm able to identify high-velocity rounds as well as mortars, rockets, artillery, aircraft, all types of aircraft. I'm trained to do that for whatever comes down in front of us on military missions. This huge craft was way beyond anything I'd ever been trained for. Sergeant CJ's wife remembered the UFO surface glistened, and she was comparing it for me. She said, you know, when you get a rainbow sheen, like on an oil slick, she said the whole surface to her looked like these rainbow colors, sort of dim and surface reflections when it tilted and moved toward them. And she also thought that there were round lights around the perimeter. The encounter was from 1:25 to 1:29 a.m. Eastern, precisely from Sergeant CJ's point of view, on the early morning of June 29th, 2015, because he looked at his digital watch. He said, I'm so used to looking at my watch all the time in my work. He said, I looked at my digital watch when we saw the craft, and then he said it had been there for a few minutes, and then he said it didn't move. I swear it did not move. It blinked out in front of them like they shut off a light. And for those of you who are very familiar with the field, you know that is a very common description by people who have seen part of this unidentified aerial phenomena, that instead of it moving, it just clicks out. Then the couple feel extremely confused and disoriented. Sergeant CJ drove up the road a few miles and found a Shake Rag Express on Highway 1 South. And when he tried to get out of the truck, he said his legs felt like wet noodles, as if he could not stand up, and he didn't know what was wrong. But the greater shock was when he bought some food. The Shake Rag Express receipt showed here that they were in Wadley, Georgia. And this is way off of their GPS. Here's where they started. Here's Wadley. The GPS was supposed to do this. And I've talked with them, they both said, how could we have been in the car and it veers north and neither one of us knew that? And it really bothers him. He is so bothered by this. It's a profound angst inside of this man. He's in the Army. He is supposed to be responsible, and he's supposed to be able to control his environment, and something like this happens. This man is really, really troubled. And the couple had no idea about how this diversion occurred. This trip should have taken 4.5 hours, and they should have been in Atlanta late at that night. But what happens next in this amazing saga implies that this diversion that they were not conscious about on Route 1 North to the rural countryside of Wadley, Georgia, was under the control of an alien intelligence in order to transmit binary information into Sergeant CJ's mind. Now first, let's compare the June 29th Wadley craft symbols with the December 26, 1980 Peniston. The far left symbol seems to be at least very similar to this one. Here again, like in Utsuro Bune, is the circle, the triangle, and this one has 3 circles. Peniston is the circle around the triangle with 2, and we saw how that compared with Utsuro Bune. Sergeant CJ and his wife continued driving northwest to Atlanta, and again they went on a completely different road, and they finally went a little north of Atlanta, feeling that they had to make up time for this huge loss they did not understand. And they checked into the Magnuson Hotel of Kennesaw, a little north of Atlanta, at 7:36 a.m. on June 29th. So this had happened around 1:25 to 29 a.m. Now they're checking in here at 7:36 a.m. on June 29th, 2015. And they slept all that day, and then they got back on the road, headed for Kentucky. And the credit card sales receipt for the Motel 6 here in Paducah shows CJ and his family checked in at 5:36 a.m. on June 30th, 2015. Exhausted, everyone. The children, CJ and his wife, they all fell into sleep. But Sergeant CJ found himself waking up in their Motel 6 bathroom, holding a ballpoint pen in one hand and this letter-sized back of the motel receipt in the other, staring at the back of this receipt covered with squares and lines that trailed off to a WTF. A sense of humor, even unconscious. During our first interview about this high strangeness, he asked that his voice be electronically altered because he is active Army and he wants to remain anonymous. So what you're going to hear is a distorted electronic male voice. Sergeant CJ talks about a vivid dream that he had before becoming conscious in the bathroom. In the dream, light gray alien beings wearing dark lenses over their eyes, similar to but larger than human eyes, are warning about a threat to Earth. Have you seen the symbols in sleep or in your mind's eye?
Usually in my sleep. And that first time that it happened was in that hotel. I do not remember getting out of bed and walking into the bathroom with a pen in my hotel sheet and doing that. I literally woke up standing there after I had finished.
Have the symbols been repeated in addition to the squares and the vertical lines?
Yeah, I've seen them again in dreams.
Can you describe that dream?
Yeah, it's dark all the way around, and they're being scrolled past from right to left. They're slightly illuminated in like a light blue color.
Are you getting any impression of what they are saying in your dream?
Something Council of 5, I believe.
Council of 5, and what are they saying?
It's more of a warning and preparation for something, an alert of what may come, or what could come, or what is soon to come, or something to that effect. And they're doing what they can to try to help us. They're almost to the point where they're outnumbered, and we're going to need to assist and get to where we need to be sooner in order to be able to stand a chance.
Did you see any humanoids of any shape or size or type in any of your dreams?
Yes, ma'am.
Which type?
The skin similar to ours, however, grayish in color, elongated heads, larger sockets for eyes, larger eyes. In the dream that I was seeing, there was one about where my feet would be, and I could see expressions on its face as a little bit of worry, but was trying to keep me calm.
Did you get the telepathic impressions of warning there aren't enough of us, there's more of them, something is going to happen that's going to be a big problem, and that these beings have been trying to help and now they can't because they don't have enough numbers versus what is there?
Similar, perhaps, but I think it's more along the lines of what we're doing that's going to harm us, such as sending signals out into space is not a safe thing to do, that we have technology that we need to expand on, but it's being kept from everyone behind locked doors or closed doors, and only to certain individuals or something to that effect, and allow all minds to come together to get things done a little bit quicker.
Or what is going to happen?
Whatever's going to happen might negatively affect us. I don't know what that might be, though.
And if there is a warning or an alert, that would imply that something is coming that may be harmful.
I don't know. I know it's something that will affect us here on Earth. I know that at our current advancement in technology and how we're progressing is happening too slow. And the way to fix that is opening up and allowing everyone here who is kept in the dark or not being told the information. We need to allow outside minds in order to solve the issues that we're having, to increase our advancement in technology and speed up our process for advancement.
If that doesn't happen, what bad could happen?
I really don't have an answer to that.
About the Council of Five, Sergeant CJ told me he had never heard about this outside this dream. But when you Google ET or Alien Council of Five, this is one of the websites that comes up, and you see that it is associated on this list of alleged alien races that include the Emerther. And the website Alien Axioms describes the Emerther as one of the founder races of the Council of Five. There's no source. It doesn't give any source for this information. I'm just sharing what you find when you just do a search on this. One of the founder races of the Council of Five, ancient and more advanced on many levels than most cosmic intelligences. Allegedly, it was the Emerther that wanted to meet with or did meet American President Dwight Eisenhower, perhaps over stopping atomic bomb testing. The website states, without giving information sources, quote, "Very little is known about the 5 alien races that make up the Council of Five. These 5 races have been protecting Earth and humans for a long time and last met together on this planet in 1944, close quote. I asked Sergeant CJ why he thought advanced intelligences would be communicating with Earth humans in binary code. And he replied, quote, "Well, maybe it's like the yin and yang symbol of black and white, so zeros and ones can be used all over the universe to communicate. On Earth, this is what standard ASCII 8-bit binary code looks like. It starts with the number 0, which is the equivalent of 0011, 0000, or black, black, white, white, black, 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 black. Capital letters, as it breaks down, capital letters have their own section. Lowercase letters, numbers, and here's what you would be doing with when you would have punctuation. Now, Australian geneticist Horace Drew, PhD, volunteered to translate Sergeant CJ's squares and ones. And here is the first page so that you can see how this goes. These are the letters that you get from these sequences of binary code. And so in the beginning, he gets CONTINUOUS, we know that's continuous, and then PROTE. Then he has to do more calculation. CTION of HUMNAN, and down we go There's another page, just so you'll get the idea of how this is done. And here, Linda, the 2 attached files provide a final accurate translation of the new Georgia binary code. Continuous protection of humanity, a latitude-longitude, 49 degrees, 27 minutes north, 11 degrees, 5 minutes. Did I say that right? 49 degrees, 27 minutes north, 11 degrees, 5 minutes east. Expose hidden knowledge to, and all is all caps, and there is this accent mark. It's there, it's in the binary, we don't know why. Citizens, advancement imperative for planetary survival. Beware of Orion 1350.3 and Z, we don't spell it this way, RUTICULI 39.1 question mark 70. He wrote the 2 coded numbers 13503 and 39.1 tell us the distance in light years from Earth to the Orion Nebula, which this is true, 1,350 light years from Earth to the Orion Nebula. Or to the binary star system of Zeta Reticuli, it should be basically 2 eyes, he misspelled that, 39.17 light years, and he says, source of grays, question mark, thinking of Betty and Barney Hill and all the references to grays associated with Zeta Reticuli 1 and 2. Avoid signal messages sent, and he says, avoid capture of signal by these grays or those grays at Zeta Reticuli 1 and 2. Now, what's interesting about this line is that the same warning came in 2015 from Elon Musk, Tesla and space, Bill Gates, Microsoft and the Foundation, and physicist Stephen Hawking. All 3 of those minds in 2015, within about 3 or 4 months of each other, warned about both SETI, the goal of sending out signals into interstellar space, and Earth relying too much on artificial intelligence. Let's go back to the first line that says continuous protection of humanity, 49 degrees, 27 minutes north, 11 degrees, 5 minutes east. If that latitude and longitude are supposed to be a location on Earth where ETs from the Council of Five are supposed to be protecting humans, how odd that it turns out to be town center of Nuremberg, Germany. Nuremberg was a significant city for the Nazis in World War II and the location of the international war crime trials after the war ended. But Nuremberg was also famous more than 400 years ago in 1561 when immense black cylinders appeared in an early dawn sky and released many strange smaller blue, black, red, and orange spheres, rods, and crosses. Many people watched the aerial machines clash in battle. They reported they were fighting each other above a great black spear. What is this? That remained stationary for the hour. People reported this. This went on for an hour. And some of the UFOs crashed with smoke. And this was all, you might say, recorded in this famous woodcut by German artist Hans Glaser. So who, in that aerial UFO battle, might have been protecting humanity as stated in the Sergeant CJ binary code of continuous protection of humanity? What could the battle be about? And let's go deeper into binary code messages by comparing Sergeant CJ's string of zeros and ones to Sergeant Jim Penniston's back in December 26, 1980. That was the night that Sergeant Peniston with Airman First Class John Burroughs and Airman Ed Kavansak were ordered into Rendlesham Forest to investigate strange colored lights moving around in the tall forest on civilian land that ran along RAF Bentwaters Woodbridge, and that was then NATO's largest air base. This is page 1 of the binary code written down by Sergeant Peniston after he touched the raised symbols on the surface of a mysterious black glassy triangular craft on the forest ground. These red lines mark off the groups of zeros and ones so that they can match against that ASCII code that I showed you just a couple of minutes ago, looking for letters and numbers. At the right, just like I showed you, this is what is coming down from these numbers. And we'll just keep going through here. So you see page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5 is where he stops writing, end of transmission. Now we're looking at Peniston personally approved in an official release of all the binary code. We just saw the pages that were here, up here. And some of this is different, changed over time. And then after this had been released and translated, these latitude and longitudes came from more binary code. And these eyes of your eyes, origin. It's origin here, origin here. This origin is the same as this latitude, longitude. And origin year, 8100. Peniston felt very strongly, I think, about this being something that was in the category of a time machine from the future. And if you subtract Earth year 1980 from 8100, you get 6,120 years in the future for the time travelers instead of, in his hypnosis, he uses the term 40,000 years in the future, that whatever had come back was from 40,000 years in the future. But it can also be argued that the time travelers from a distant future were not referring to Earth-based 365-day year cycles of time. But nobody really fully understands this. And it is also very important to understand that Peniston did not have any decimal placements, no designators for the decimals in those long strings of zeros and ones I showed you on those pages. So each latitude and longitude, out of all of those different peregrinations of where you put the decimal point, could be any one of 24 possibilities, according to retired astronomer Mike Reed and geneticist Horace Drew. For example, in this second line, I think my laser pen has just finally bit the I've had this for probably 10 years. I've never, we talked about would there be any technical failures. Well, my laser has just gone out. If anybody has one, hand me. In that second line, where it says the latitude, longitude, and high Brazil. Oh, great. Thank you so much. Wouldn't that be wonderful if life worked like that? Wait. This number and this number. When a decimal was tried in a different position by Dr. Drew and by Dr. Reed, they didn't come up with high Brazil. The scientists felt strongly that the option that they came up with, which was precisely in the center of the roof of the town center of Woodbridge, England, which is not far from the forest. And so they said they felt strongly that this should be Woodbridge and not High Brazil. And it made sense because if you have a black triangular craft and it's a time machine and it's here doing work for something else, it would be logical, it would be emitting a continuous stream of location information to whoever, whatever, sent it to Rendlesham Forest. And that all the named locations in parentheses, all of these are in that same category, that what everybody did was they took and did all these permutations, and then they decided that maybe this is more logical because it's not in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean or the Pacific Ocean, except for the selection of High Brazil, which came from an ancient sea story about an island west of Ireland that only appeared once every 7 years, and then adding to its mystery were tales from people there who said they tried to go in boats from Ireland to this island and they never could reach it. And it was the Ancient Aliens TV program that chose High Brazil option because it kind of fit into Ancient Aliens, and that's why you're seeing that. But I think that the scientists, I think it makes more sense that it was actually Town Center Woodbridge, and all of this is to explain to you that none of this is carved in stone because there was no decimal defined. Now, let's compare Sergeant CJ's first June 30th, 2016, binary, June 29th, 2015, the binary translation on the top, and then this is 35 years before, or this is 35 years after, whichever way you want to look at it, from December 26th. And there are three words that really do stand out as being continuous, 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 humanity, humanity, advancement, imperative for planetary survival, this continuous for planetary advance. These are 35 years apart. Now, another similar warning about planetary survival came in this binary code discovered in a wheat field next to Crabwood Copse in the village of Pitt near Winchester, Hampshire, England, on August 15, 2002. The gray alien head and binary code disk is in front of BBC Winchester's tall broadcast antenna. These thin lines, we all thought, are to simulate an early 20th century TV broadcast. Remember when there'd be the lines? The implication seemed to be that the crop formation was a reply to Earth TV signals. But was the warning from the alien depicted in the wheat holding the binary disk, or was the warning about the alien in the wheat pattern? The three stars or figures here, everybody said immediately back then, oh, this must be famous Orion belt stars. So many people think that this is talking about a threat from something associated with the Orion constellation. Now, when you go down into the binary, it's just to show you that it starts, here's where the message, it starts on the inside and winds out. And over here, it is showing you, when they calculate, see the B, E, I'm got a reflection, BEWARE. You see how that's working. So, okay, so that's how they started, and they get beware. Beware the bearers of false gifts and their broken promises. Much pain, but still time. Believe there is good out there. We oppose deception, conduit, closing. And in fact, in the first translation, I remember talking with somebody in England about this who had gone to this formation, and they said that the they thought that the binary was actually making for like a ring, like what the punctuation would look like in an old telegraph. A similar message was repeated 13 years later on June 23rd, 2015. This is last summer, near the airport of Turin, Italy, also known as Torino. This city is where Jesus Christ's alleged burial shroud is kept. Geneticist Horace Drew, PhD from Sydney, tackled these very difficult rings of binary code that included 100, if you count all these lines of these little circles that go around in between the triangles, they total 128 small circles in these straight lines between 16 triangular rays of the outermost ring. His binary translation of the outer ring only is Timeo, ET, all caps, that comes from the binary, Ferentes, exclamation point, is in the binary code. Dr. Drew said the Torino, Italy, June 23rd, 2015 it's the summer solstice wheat pattern, quote, "It looks like a clock where we have to rotate the inner wheel to match the outer wheel," close quote. Even though the inner ring binary code is not clear, Dr. Drew thinks some of it warns about a Trojan horse event coming to Earth. He wonders in writing to me if the Trojan horse is an invasion attack by the gray ETs from Orion and Zeta Reticuli warned about by someone else in Sergeant CJ's binary code only 7 days later on June 30th, 2015. So these two events happened very close. This crop formation followed by the CJ going off on that route and that disk and the binary download on that back of that receipt. Sergeant CJ did receive more telepathic downloads coming into his head at night. He said the squares and lines came faster than before, so it was hard for him to write it all down. He also could see that some of the squares were darkened, and he managed to get some of the new communication written down along with his comments about what was happening. From October 27th to the first week of January 2016, Sergeant CJ was waking up a lot yelling. I talked with his wife, and she said he would wake her up talking loudly and was often saying a string of numbers while he's still asleep and not awake. She told me near tears how much all of this scared her, and she wanted it to stop. Sergeant CJ said he was trying to concentrate on the dark shadings in the squares that he had not been able to copy before because the images moved too fast in his mind, going from right to left, that bluish color, but he knew there were shadings. And then he finally thought he was getting some of the shading in these new pages. Dr. Drew researched binary codes and found this one at thinkersmith.org. None of us knew this existed. That uses squares that are either clear or blackened to represent ones and zeros. Horace Drew applied it to Sergeant CJ's new pages. And on the far left of this graphic, to show you how this works, this is what's coming out of those squares and ones. IMMINENT space. Imminent. Here's the translation from October 2015 to January 2016. Imminent threat soon upon Earth's leaders and civilizations. Expose and disband hidden knowledge to all citizens, employ safe and controlled joint study to all minds, progression, imperative for combined survival. Embrace this space vessel threat, 000, journey, 12 in brackets, LY, he interprets as light year, 12 light years, And he insists, the binary sent me so I could see. Ikes. President Eisenhower, he thinks. IKES. I know, if ETs are using the short form of a name of a president, but this is what it comes out. IKES embedded, and then repeat, DED, citizens are ready, AIS, he interprets as, and then close, and then evolve, 11111, and clearly that is not making a lot of sense. But the issue that Dr. Drew wonders, could these intelligences that are trying to use Sergeant CJ's mind be trying to reference themselves back to the 40s and the 50s and some communication with President Eisenhower? Here, Royal Emerther warning, expose foreign technology to all evolutionary advancement needed to prevent takeover. The 3 is in brackets, and this odd quote mark, and we have no idea what that means, but you're now seeing what has come from CJ's continued getting this binary code, and it may be, as he says to me, he says, Linda, it moves so fast. And he said, I'm not really sure how I can do it anymore. He says, I'm at the edge of my ability to try. It's like what Peniston said. He could not get the zeros and ones out of his mind's eye. It's hard for us sitting here to imagine this, that something could activate your brain in such a way that until you write it down or do something with it, I could be looking at zeros and ones while I'm talking to you, and they wouldn't go away until I wrote them down or did something. That's the same description of this Sergeant J.C. that Peniston said that he lived with until he wrote them down in a notebook. It didn't go away, and it was driving him crazy. And we have in this last paragraph this reference yet again to emerther. And the truth is, I had never heard of this word. Dr. Drew had never heard of this word. How many people in this room have been exposed to emerther? Is there anybody who has been exposed to EMERTHER? I'm not seeing a hand. Well, I'm with you, and so is Dr. Drew. Never, ever. But when you type in the Google search bar, you get that photo I showed, and you get these informations about this group, EMER. Somebody is posting it. Who knows? They're not giving sources. Then, on February 18th, 2016, Sergeant CJ found that he had added 5 new lines of squares and lines without darkening any of them. And he's doing this in a notebook. He promised me he would keep a notebook and a pen right beside the bed if he woke up. And then he emailed me, and this is what he said. This was fast, and I was unsure if I drew them down correctly. It felt like it was not meant for me to write them, and I felt weird about it, like it was not clear enough for me to. I just did the best I could and figured it was probably all messed up or wrong. They are the only ones I have ever had since I sent you photos of my notebook. I could not darken the boxes and lines because they were moving too fast, and I was having a hard time concentrating. There was much more to it, but I could not keep up concentrating, close quote. So I sent this to Dr. Drew, and what he sent back was a surprise. This shows you 5 clumps that he told me in the email that this came in. He said, I think it must be Sumerian because he recognized Ki is a Sumerian word for earth. So I sent the 5 words like this. To Professor Joshua Jeffers, PhD, Research Specialist, Royal Inscriptions of the Neo-Assyrian Period Project at the University of Pennsylvania Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology, Babylonian Section in Philadelphia. And here is his March 24th, 2016 reply. The first two words, Nabu, Rakbu, and the fourth word, Sanu, look to be Akkadian and not Sumerian. The first could be the god Nabu, but without the cuneiform, it is difficult to say since there is no divine classifier before it here. Nabu was one of the three most important gods in Sumeria. Nabu was the keeper of the tablets of destiny that recorded humanity's fate. He was son of Marduk and grandson of Enki, Ea of the Anunnaki. Nabu's grandfather, Ea, is the creator and protector of humanity because Ea created humans out of clay to be worker slaves for the Mesopotamian gods. But the supreme god Enlil was irritated by the noise humans made, apparently because we aren't telepathic and we have to talk out loud. So Enlil wanted to destroy Ea's human slave creation with a devastating flood. But Ea realized what Enlil was up to and got a friend to build an ark so that humanity could escape God Enlil's act of annihilation of humans. Professor Jeffers continues, the second word, rakbu, would be the noun rider from the verb rakabu, to ride, frequently upon a horse or chariot. The middle word could possibly be the word for the city of Larsa in southern Mesopotamia, written out phonetically, should be larug/k without a doubled A, but the H is nonsensical for Sumerian and Akkadian and is puzzling. The fourth word, Sanu, could be an infinitive of the verb to do again, or a second time, or even to be different, strange. The fifth word, Ki, by itself can be Sumerian and would mean earth or land. The actual meaning remains unclear. Sergeant CJ is waiting to see if he has any more telepathic downloads that might explain these Sumerian and Akkadian words. But here is one more look at everything we've been able to translate from binary transmissions to Sergeant CJ to date. And you can see a progression, but all of it has to do with protection of humanity, that strange Nuremberg reference, which may be signaling that the senders of the binary are the ones that were in the craft fighting in Nuremberg nearly 400 years ago. The constant refrain, the crop circles, and here, keeping this all secret is weakening humans. That with all of us, if we had knowledge, then whatever is the threat might not be able to get a leverage point for humans who had knowledge of everything that was going on. Expose and disband hidden knowledge. This is a very puzzling, who knows, maybe he couldn't get down the squares and that royal and Merthyr, and then add the 5 Sumerian and Akkadian words. Binary code coming into human minds in dreams or from touching symbols on alien machines, like what happened in Rendlesham Forest on December 26, 1980, was apparently of great interest to America's Defense Intelligence Agency. The DIA had remote viewers working at Fort Meade, Maryland, next door to the National Security Agency in 1986. Remote viewer Lynn Buchanan worked in a DIA unit called, all caps, DT-S. Their goal was to research how accurately psychic abilities could be used in their spy program called Stargate. On July 14, 1986, one of Lynn's assigned practice targets was the Rendlesham Forest incident. But only his monitor knew the target on a 3x5 card in a file drawer. Further, Lynn knew nothing about the military mystery that had occurred 6 years before on December 26 to 28, 1980. But what Lynn did see in remote viewing seems to link to the repeating theme in the binary code messages about planetary survival for aliens, humans, or both. I interviewed Lynn Buchanan recently about this 2008 CIA released document. It is Lynn's original 1986 Rendlesham Forest controlled remote viewing session. This is the top page. None of us, including Lynn, knew it had been unclassified and posted on the CIA website until John Burroughs was told to go to a specific URL on the web. It was the CIA website, and there was the 1986 transcript of Lynn Buchanan's remote viewing session. Why was it put there, Lynn wondered, without anyone telling him? The following audio segment from my interview with Lynn about the 1986 session begins as he was seeing inside of a craft in remote viewing that was landed in Rendlesham Forest, and he's trying to find a pilot and propulsion unit.
I got that the driver of this vehicle is not in the vehicle. He's somewhere else.
Like this object that you are remote viewing in Rendlesham Forest could be a drone that is not manned, but that the intelligence associated with this is somewhere else.
Yeah, and that's when I got AOL break. Oh, I'm viewing ATs. So move me back to the place with the yellow light. That's when I got an incubator. I definitely realized that this young person, whatever, was in the place of the yellow light and that it was an incubator. Putting my analyst hat on, I would tend to say from this one session that this craft was looking for an ideal place, and once it found it, that incubator would open up and provide a living space for whatever was in it.
And you mean that the incubator in the black glassy craft, which is the outside version we have from the Pennison drawing, it would then deposit the extraterrestrial life forms in the incubator in a site on this planet to grow into whatever those extraterrestrials are.
That would be the analysis of that one session, yes.
Now, you did other remote views on RAF Bentwaters later on.
I was tasked with finding the power source. In fact, I still didn't know really what the Bentwater thing was. I got the propulsion system was a very small, enclosed thing that didn't really hook up to the craft, but was in some way providing a field of energy around the craft. And it was in an enclosed container type thing. When I was told to mentally move into the container to find out what was going on, I was not able to do that.
And this is the black box that you encountered in that very first July 14th, 1986 remote viewing. You didn't know where you were at the time, and you didn't know what it was.
That was it, yeah. And this energy type box has come up in several other things, like Sacsayhuaman that has, I think, 100-ton stones.
Sacsayhuaman is in Cusco, Peru.
Yeah, and there was a tasking about how those were moved. I've heard a lot of people say those were moved by sound and all that, but that's not what I got in my remote viewing session. I got that there was some kind of an object that emitted energy that could surround something and make it to where you could just pick it up.
Right, it would neutralize gravity.
Yeah. I had a task one time of the Utsuobune, which was an ET that landed in northern Japan. In that case, this female-looking being came out of the ship. She carried this box with her, and she never let anybody have this box. And I think the box, whatever was in the box, was what made the ship move.
Time machines, incubators of alien life trying to survive in planet seeding missions, ET hybrids and clones, eons beyond us, as the MJ-12 documents say. Whistleblowers have reported that alien technologies can make their various spacecraft, androids, and other ET technologies invisible to human eyes. This naval ship fading into invisibility is an October 2015 Northrop Grumman Facebook posting. In addition to invisibility, the extraterrestrial technology is described as functioning with self-activating software that can neutralize gravity and project three-dimensional holograms as camouflage that human eyes and minds cannot detect in the Earth environment. The alien goal, they say, is to harvest genetic material from this planet's animals and human life in order to create a large ongoing supply of rapid cycle cloned and hybridized body containers with very advanced technology that some people in the human abduction syndrome refer to as the resurrection tubes. I first learned about the cloning tube technology the first week of March 1991, when I received in the mail a large envelope that contained an audio cassette, letter, and several color drawings from a woman named Linda Porter. She was born in 1946 and began having memorable experiences with non-humans by age 12 in 1958. She had decided it was important to reach me after hearing a conference presentation that I had given in California concerning eyewitness testimony about non-human intelligences interacting with our planet. She was concerned about her vulnerability as a person caught up in the human abduction syndrome, and she was frightened about the United States government's policy of hiding the alien presence. Her letter began, quote, "We abductees are caught in the middle of a series of ongoing events that will one day prove to be historically significant to the future of the Earth. Unfortunately, because of our continuing non-voluntary interactions with these beings, we have, in a sense, become victims of both sides of the phenomena. On the one hand, we are used by the aliens for their own purposes, whatever those purposes may be. On the other, if we speak out, we risk ridicule from the public, and in some cases, possible harassment and/or intimidation by government and military personnel. If you could look directly into these creatures' eyes, you would realize that every detail of your life, no matter how personal, how mundane, how minute, is known to them. It makes me wonder, are we some kind of Ken and Barbie dolls being played with by an emotionally immature race of beings with no sense of morality? Or are we pawns held in the grasp of a dying race that will do anything for their own survival, including the cold-blooded mutilation of another species, we humans, and the brutal mutilation of helpless animals? Unless a person has been through the trauma of an abduction, they cannot comprehend how these entities can strip the mind and soul as easily as they can strip the clothes off a body. They scan details of a person's life with such facility that they make you feel as if you are an interesting piece of lint caught between their toes. In the blink of an eye, these beings devastate all personal freedom, all sense of privacy, and all prospects for living a normal existence. A person's life is never the same again. He or she is changed forever," close quote. Linda Porter's words speak for a lot of abductees who have interacted with gray, blonde, reptilian, or insect humanoids. But some abductees think that there are friendly non-humans, which actually are trying to help people advance to more stability that will help the non-humans to survive as well. In this 1995 Thanksgiving letter to me, Linda Porter wrote, quote, "The people who live on the earth, those who will survive the destructive changes to come, will be evolving into a new species of being. I'm not referring right now to the time travelers from Earth's future that are here also. That was something that was necessary because Earth's governments got hold of a dangerous technology that greatly altered Earth's future for the worse. Remember the mistake that was made that I told you about a while back? Some type of technology fell into the wrong hands, and the future time travelers were sent back in time to change that. I don't know if it has been changed, at least not yet. But that was an entire sidebar to evolution that was never meant to happen," close quote. Linda Porter was the first of half a dozen people in the human abduction syndrome that I've interviewed who experienced being raised and lowered in a tube of light and passing through walls that she and other abductees say feel like thousands of little feathers all over their body. Linda said the light tube is different from the tunnels that opened up inside of her bedroom, quote. "The beam is used only to transfer people from Earth to a craft and back. The tunnel is a physical created hole from one dimension to another. Traveling through the tunnel was what made me ill. It had something to do with change in physical density of two differing dimensions," close quote. Linda told me that in 1963, when she was 17 years old, she was abducted from her Covina, California home by gray-colored beings with large eyes. These gray beings seem to be in the extraterrestrial biological entities category of what the government calls EBINs, that are described in leaked government documents as friendly and concerned about Earth and human evolution. Or perhaps the Emerthers, referenced in Sergeant JC's binary downloads. Linda Porter was shown a procedure to transfer the soul or life force from a dying man into a healthy, younger clone of the man that Linda could see in one of the cloning resurrection tubes. The gray being told Linda telepathically that the same soul transfer would be done with her. The gray explained to her that she had rheumatic fever as a teenager that damaged her heart. The gray non-human said it was vital that Linda Porter's soul entity continue in the same genetic body container that she had been born with in order to accomplish an unknown alien agenda. Linda saw rise out of the top of the dead man's spine, right at the top where the neck joins to the spine, this yellow-orange light that elongated in the air as it moved across the room to a row of body-sized tubes lighted from top and bottom and filled with a strange purple-looking gas. Inside the tube on the far right was a cloned body of the same man, but several years younger. Linda Porter said there was a problem about Earth body containers, souls, other dimensions, and altered timelines. Quote, "I was told that the resurrected cloned man would be relocated elsewhere, maybe Australia, and would continue on with his life there. He would die in Minnesota, where he had come from, and from this point of view, his family would think he was dead. He would be alive in Australia," which might explain the doppelganger phenomenon that John Mack and others back in the 80s. There was conferences we'd go to, and there would be people in the abduction syndrome saying, "My God, I am taken up in this beam of light, and this door or tunnel opens, and it's me. I'm looking at me like I'm looking in a mirror, but it's moving to me." And they called it the doppelganger syndrome. Linda thought it was vital to the non-human entities that the man's soul continue functioning longer inside the same kind of container that his older sick body had been. Linda thought that part of the reason that they take tissue samples from abductees when they are quite young is to have this tissue in reserve in case a new body for abductees becomes necessary later on. Quote, "New bodies can be stored indefinitely. The containers in the sketch with the 3 people in the tubes are storage containers. The containers in both new sketches I sent you are activation containers. They have a light in the top that must be on the person for an unknown amount of hours before a body can be activated if a body has been in storage. If newly made, it does not need light. In the sketch with the 3 people in the tubes, the body on the far right was the younger one given to the dying man. I got the impression the aliens do not like to do this soul transfer very often. Actually, I got the feeling the aliens are not supposed to be doing this at all. But they seem to be backed into a corner, and they have no other recourse. They also seem to be trying to hide all of this from some higher form of life, whatever the authority is that prohibits this soul transfer, also prohibits the ETs from interfering on this planet. But they are interfering. Whoever it is much higher evolved than they are and wields a great deal of power over many, many other realms of existence. There is much, much more to existence than we could ever begin to understand. Much of what we have been taught regarding the physical universe and the laws that govern it is wrong. The Eben doing the soul transfer from her diseased body to her new clone body in one of the lighted tubes gave Linda Porter an overview of how the cosmos is constructed from the Eben's point of view. The universe is built on sound patterns, which is why so many different world dimensions can exist in the same space. Each is on a different frequency. You disrupt a world dimension to the point that you destroy the carrier wave it exists on, and you have created a hole in existence that cannot support the dimension above or below it. Each frequency, besides maintaining its own world dimension, also supports or holds in place the one above it and below it. Everything is interdependent. There are countless worlds, dimensions occupying the same space without being aware of one another because of having their own individual octaves. This octave frequency holds the world dimension in place and causes it to exist safely without interfering with or even being aware of other worlds around it. This frequency acts as a buffer zone to keep everything in its place. You do anything to disrupt it, and you begin a collapse that starts a deadly chain reaction. If the density of this collapse reaches a certain weight, space-time itself begins to collapse. Atomic and hydrogen bombs physically tear into other dimensions. And whatever the experiment is that our government is involved with in outer space, if successful, it will change the density of matter to such an extent that the chain reaction started will not be able to be stopped by anybody in any world dimension. There are literally hundreds of different alien life forms here trying to stop what is happening, as it is putting their own worlds at risk. Some, as I had mentioned in earlier letters, are not supposed to be interfering, but they're doing so anyway. What they are all trying to do is stop the ripple effect that will emanate outward from Earth should this government experiment succeed. With all their technology, why don't the aliens or their superiors just walk in and stop the whole thing themselves? Why do they need us abductees to speak for them? Something just doesn't make any sense. I wonder if we are being lied to, used for some purpose to put over ideas they want us to believe. If there is an experiment, maybe if it succeeds, it will put us in competition with the aliens for something they don't want to share. Maybe they're trying to scare us out of their neighborhood, close quote. A similar warning about a government experiment in space was described by another woman in the abduction syndrome named Judy Doherty. I met Judy in the spring of 1980 when I was producing the TV documentary A Strange Harvest about the worldwide animal mutilation phenomenon. Law enforcement told me as far back as September 1979 that they knew, quote, the perpetrators are creatures from outer space, close quote, because of the bloodless surgical excisions on both the surface of animals and the removal of internal organs such as hearts and trachea without any surgical excisions on the surface of the animal's body. As one doctor told me, we're dealing with something no less than molecular extraction from inside of bodies. The following are excerpts from my Emmy Award-winning documentary, A Strange Harvest.
And by the spring of 1979, United States Senator Harrison Schmitt of New Mexico was concerned enough to call for a conference in Albuquerque on April 20th to talk about cattle mutilations. And I began wondering again, what was going on? In the past few months, I've traveled through Wyoming, New Mexico, and Colorado exploring this mystery. I've talked with journalists, law enforcement people, ranchers, and scientists. They have shown me their photographs, their reports, and their files. In this program, you will hear the testimonies of many of these people who have been involved with this puzzling phenomenon over the past decade. Some of their statements might shock you, but they're all part of this amazing story that I call A Strange Harvest.
One of the investigators I've been working with for 5 years dropped in the office, and we discussed what was new. And he said, well, the thing is now, I'll tell you. He says, and I'm inclined to agree with him, that who is doing this now is very possibly creatures not of this planet. Now that, that shakes you up a little bit. Creatures not of this planet. You're thinking of Buck Rogers and things like this. But that's the way it is seriously right now. That it's very, very possible that these mutilations are being done by creatures from outer space.
You can feel yourself even going deeper.
What you are about to hear is perhaps the first and only known eyewitness account of a mutilation. Because Dr. Leo Sprinkle is recognized as one of the world's leading authorities on cases involving UFOs and human abduction, he was contacted by the Aerial Phenomenon Research Organization in Tucson, Arizona, to do hypnosis work with this woman. Her name is Judy Doherty. On a clear moonlit night in May 1973, Judy was driving back from a bingo game in Houston, Texas. She and her mother, daughter Cindy, and brother and sister-in-law watched a strange, bright light hover in the sky. After that night, she suffered terrible headaches and anxiety. In 1978, she underwent one hypnosis session which brought out part of her unusual experience, but not all of it. She also had several psychiatric and personality evaluations, all with results in the normal human behavior range. This second hypnosis session with Dr. Sprinkle occurred on March 13th, 1980.
Now you're standing outside your car. Now you're looking up. You can describe your impressions. What are your impressions?
It's like a spotlight that's shining down on the back of my car. And it's like it has substance to it. I can see an animal being taken up in this. I can see it squirming and trying to get free. And it's like it's being sucked up. It's taken into some sort of chamber. It's a little round, tiny room. And I get nauseated at watching how they excise parts. It's done very quickly, but the calf doesn't die immediately. For some reason, the calf's heart isn't taken, and I don't know. It seems like it's still living, and that upset me very much. And then I can see the calf being lowered. It's like it's being dropped back down. And when it's on the ground, it's dead. I can see that it's not moving. But I feel very sick to my stomach at what I witnessed.
You see the animal being cut up?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. How's it being cut up?
Dissected.
Mm-hmm. With knives?
Instruments of some kind.
Mm-hmm. Can you describe the instruments?
They're like a knife, but they have different kind of handles. More like a razor that's doesn't have movable parts, but like a straight razor type. There's tissue. It's laid out flat and smooth. It glistens. And the needles, there's needles in it, or what appears to be like needles. It may be probes, I don't know. But it has a tube connected to it. And the same thing with what appears to be testicles. Can't tell. There's a probe or a needle or something inserted. And the tube leaving. The same with the eye.
Is anybody else around you?
I feel the presence of other things, but I don't know what they are. I can't see them.
Mm-hmm. You feel you're standing by the side of the road, by your car now, or are you standing someplace else now?
I feel in two places at once.
Mm-hmm. Okay, describe how you feel.
I feel like that I was able to see what was going on in the craft, but I was also standing beside the road.
Mm-hmm. Okay, just let yourself focus on what is happening inside the craft. Be aware of who is around you. It's okay. You'll be able to describe who is standing around you.
It appears to be two little men.
Two little men? Mm-hmm. How do they look?
Their hands look funny. They have long claw nails, like. Okay, they have very large eyes. They're very hypnotic. Like, they're so big that, and they don't blink. Their eyes do not blink. It's almost like a snake. They were very snappy about their movements, and they knew exactly what they were doing, and I felt a little better because for some reason they projected that it was necessary this be done, that, it was for our betterment, for the betterment of mankind that this was done, that they were more or less watching out for us.
So you felt better when you had that
Yes.
impression of not only precision, but also a benevolent or a kind attitude
Right.
toward people? Mm-hmm.
I can't say that they were kind.
But concerned?
I can't even
No,
say
you
that they
say
were
concerned.
concerned. They were just like doing a job that evidently it affects them too. And it has to do with somehow nuclear waste or testing, or they've been here for quite some time, and they test the soil as well as our water, as well as our animal life, our vegetation. When I question why they aren't saying more, and why they can't stop it if they're so knowledgeable.
Mm-hmm.
And they get angry. I don't know. I don't understand that.
Mm-hmm. You don't know why they get angry?
I don't know why they don't. I don't know why they get angry, and I don't know why if they can't stop it if they're so knowledgeable.
At one point in the hypnosis session, Judy doesn't understand why she can see her daughter Cindy in the car 1 minute and gone the next.
Breathing deeply and easily, let yourself relax. You can be aware of yourself standing by the side of the car. You can be aware of yourself standing in the craft. And now let yourself be aware of where Cindy is.
I know I have a feeling of fear.
Okay, let yourself go on through the experience. Let yourself go on through the fear. What impressions come to mind?
I just visualize her on a table.
Mm-hmm. Okay, what happens next?
I'm afraid that it's going to happen to her, what they did to the animal.
Yeah. Just let yourself relax.
Forget it. No, I don't want to.
You can tolerate it. You know it.
No, I can't.
You know it's all right. Just let yourself go on through. Just relax deeply. You know that everything's going to be okay. You see Cindy on the table. What happens next?
I'm just afraid that they're going to hurt her.
Yeah, you're afraid, but you let yourself go ahead and let yourself go on through the experience. You can be aware. Just let yourself relax deeply. You can be aware of what happens next.
They put her to sleep, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You put her to sleep. Okay, what's happening now?
They're just examining her, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm so afraid that they're going to cut her or something.
Okay. Do you say anything?
They don't listen. They just ignore me and just go about their work like it's nothing.
Mm-hmm.
They don't seem to have any emotions. They don't seem to care. I thought they were going to harm her. I thought they were going to do to her what they did to the animals, you know.
But they don't harm her?
No.
No. Okay, well, what does happen?
They just take some samples from her.
Mm-hmm. What kind of samples?
I don't know, just scrapings, like they go inside her mouth.
Mm-hmm.
I can see her laying there. They just kind of scrape little pieces off.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Any other samples?
That's all I can remember.
The preceding scenes were taken from a 4-hour hypnosis session. Dr. Sprinkle stated afterward that Judy Doherty is, in his professional opinion, a sincere, honest, and credible person. What happened before our camera was her first complete and vivid recall of her 1973 experience in Texas.
They just went about their work. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have any emotion or feeling.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't seem to understand why I would even be upset.
Just like it was routine
Yes.
business for them.
Like a laboratory animal or something.
Mm-hmm.
If extraterrestrials are the ones mutilating animals, what do you think the implications are then for this planet?
Throughout the mutilations, all of us involved have been concerned with the possibility of the mutilations going from animals to human beings, understandably. Thank God to this point it hasn't happened. Whatever they're doing with the portions of these animals they are taking, I haven't the slightest idea. There's a reason for it. It's not haphazard. There's a pattern to it. I don't know. I think it's a wait-and-see game. What else can we do? If we do have beings from outer space doing this, with the capabilities to do things like this, what can we as a human race do? If they have the knowledge and the technology that it looks like they have, we're powerless. So maybe it's a wait-and-see game. I can't see anything else to do.
The first time someone tried to put the baffling puzzle pieces of what I call an alien taxonomy together for me in a more coherent picture was a Washington, D.C. military source who claimed firsthand interaction with at least one type of non-human. He agreed to talk with me off the record about the gray type he knew as extraterrestrial biological entities that he called Eben. My source told me this drawing was almost like a photograph of an Eben. He stressed that the Ebens have pear-shaped heads, not triangular with pointed chins like some other smaller types he thought were androids that worked for the Ebens. The Ebens are allegedly from a desert planet orbiting the binary sun Zeta Reticuli 1 and 2, about 39 light years from Earth. The Eben planet skies are described as bright to dim but never dark. This pastel drawing was done by a Colorado male abductee who was lifted up with his wife in their car by a cerulean blue beam of bright light in late November 1985 from a highway near Longmont, Colorado. The whole case, with many photos and illustrations, is in my first book, An Alien Harvest. My military source told me the Ebens are supposed to be friendly and do not abduct people, he stressed. But he had to admit to me that if the illustration by the husband was almost like a photograph of an Eben, then it meant the Ebens did abduct the husband and wife. It was a dramatic lifting of the couple in their car while it was moving and lifted in this blue-green beam that carried them in their car to a forest and a landed disc. And one of the things that I've heard consistently over the last 35 years by many people who have had some sort of military or government facets of all this, the grays do lie. My Washington source knew about my home box office TV project that took me to Kirtland Air Force Base on April 9th, 1983, where I was shown an alleged briefing paper for an unnamed US president that said, quote, "These extraterrestrial biological entities known by the acronym EBENS manipulated DNA in already evolving primates to create Homo sapien," close quote. My military source said, that was true, but he stressed that no one in the American government with access to that knowledge ever wanted to be alive if or when such an announcement were broadcast to the world that humans are someone else's experimental androids and ET human hybrid project. He told me that he had talked firsthand with a US Air Force captain who received telepathic communication from one non-human at a crash site in the Roswell region in 1949, not 1947. Because the captain, more than anyone else at the crash site, could most clearly receive mind-to-mind communication from the non-human and Eben, the captain was assigned to live with the entity called EBA-1 at the Los Alamos Laboratory in New Mexico until EBA-1 died of unknown causes on June 18, 1952. That Air Force captain said, one of the most important telepathic transmissions that he ever received from EBA-1 was, quote, "We made you, we put you here on Earth, but you have to live it," close quote. My Washington source tried to explain that he thought the Eben meant when he told me the key to everything is ET creation of human ET hybrid body containers in which ET life force or souls can be placed to perpetuate one of the alien civilizations that is facing physical extinction because it can no longer reproduce. This explains why the light tube resurrection technology overseen by a praying mantis and the Eben in the California abduction case with Linda Porter stressed the need to keep the soul in human body containers for specific lengths of time. but it does not explain why Homo sapiens sapien must be used to make the vital hybrid body containers to perpetuate alien souls. This is my third book, Glimpses of Other Realities, Volume 2, High Strangeness, that was first released in 1998. Not long after the publication, one night in Philadelphia, where I was living, I answered a phone ring. The deep male, unidentified voice on the other end simply said, "I thought you should know that your new book has stirred up a hornet's nest at MJ12 in Washington. Congratulations, click." Since the early 1980s, after the TV broadcast of my documentary special, A Strange Harvest, I have received some insights from 2 different government agency men willing to hear my questions about the alien presence on Earth and why that alien presence seems so focused on genetic harvest from humans and animals. One man was retired in Washington, D.C., the other continued assignments in the Southwest. Both said they had done work for the highly secret MJ12 group, and because I think this is so important, I would like to indulge your request that I be able to go on for a while longer. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. They both emphasized that there was a difference between the gray-skinned Eben types with the pear-shaped heads and the smaller, thinner grays with triangular faces. The men thought the Ebens were our allies, but did not trust the smaller grays. Adding to the physical appearance confusion were biological androids made by the Ebens and other aliens that ranged widely in appearance, from insects to humanoids designed by their makers for various planetary tasks in this and other solar systems. Both men have periodically given me information over the years, which I have no way to prove, but offer now in the context of other military and intelligence voices. And to honor their request for anonymity, I combined their information into one voice that I call Sherman in Glimpses, Volume 2, High Strangeness. And where I am beginning here is on page 128. Sherman said it was true that MJ-12, or Majestic 12, was established by one of President Harry S. Truman's executive orders in 1947. MJ-12's charter, he said, was to study the UFO phenomenon, to oversee retrievals of crashed disks and alien bodies, to back-engineer extraterrestrial technology, and to study captured beings referred to as extraterrestrial biological entities. MJ-12, he said, was also directed to keep the public and the media ignorant of the extraterrestrial presence at all costs, to prevent public panic, and to keep the aliens' advanced technologies hidden from Cold War enemies in the interests of national security. Sherman said in the 1990s, MJ-12 had changed to a different letter number code that began E2. I asked Sherman if he had personally seen non-human technology. He said he had held an Eben device called the Yellow Book, in which symbols glow yellow and three-dimensional images rise up like the Princess Leia hologram communications in Star Wars. Sherman said those three-dimensional images in the Yellow Book come from the Eben's ability to, quote, capture time and play it back, close quote, as if the Ebens monitor and analyze the consequences of their genetic manipulations on Earth over time for whatever big agenda they have. Sherman said that he had been told that the Ebens experimented genetically in Bhutan, Tibet, and Nepal, and then transplanted some of those altered human ET hybrids to what we call Central America. Specifically, the Mayans were an Eben genetic experiment. I ask, then Sherman, is it true that the Ebens and maybe other extraterrestrial groups manipulated DNA in already evolving primates to create Homo sapien, as I was shown in the briefing paper at Kirtland Air Force Base on April 9, 1983? He said, yes, but it's a difficult subject. They've been here since at least the time of the dinosaurs. And according to a report I read, the Ebens collected one of each species of dinosaur and placed them either on one big planetary zoo or on different planets. And that was at least 68 million or more years ago, and I guess they have experimented with life forms here ever since. What about the animal mutilations? The animal mutilations did occur and were performed by the aliens. We allowed them to conduct experiments using animals, not just cattle. I don't know if you are aware or not, but there were a lot of moose and caribou found mysteriously dead in the Arctic and Alaska. We think it was part of the Eben experimentation, but we couldn't figure out what happened. The Ebens wanted to conduct experiments, better animals than humans. To complicate matters, in order to cover up the animal mutilations, our government launched a military program to test certain biological drugs on animals. This was to cover up the alien mutilation program. Do the Ebens themselves enter pastures and cut the tissues from animals in mutilations? After we had more communications with the Ebens, they explained to us, you have to understand that for an advanced civilization, you have robots and androids to do these things. And we began to understand that the Eben androids could be anything. The androids can be configured any way the Ebens want for whatever mission the Ebens want carried out. The Ebens are controlling a big part of an operation concerning Earth, and we cannot control everything they do. But I can tell you the Ebens are big environmentalists, huge. They would make the Sierra Club look like brownie scouts. They were so worried about our nuclear tests and nuclear materials being exploded and contaminating not only the Earth, but the universe in general. Sherman, do you mean that our atomic bombs impacted other life forms or even other dimensions? Right. So that's one of the things the Ebens were very vocal about. They wanted above ground atomic tests stopped, and boy, were they stopped. From your point of view, are Ebens the only non-humans that have experimented genetically on this planet? All I know is that the Ebens started an experiment, but they couldn't keep out other space travelers. Word got out that this planet was a strange place to visit and that different experiments were not going the way the Ebens wanted. Part of the Ebens' problems might be because there are bad guys doing experiments too that might harm us. That really confuses matters when it comes to telling who wants to help humans and who does not. In abduction reports, people describe creatures that look like praying mantis insects. What are those? As far as I've heard, they could be very advanced androids which can oversee long-term projects that last for thousands of years, but I'm not certain who they work with or for. What is the relationship between the Greys and the Ebens? They were enemies at one time. They are supposed to live without war today, but the Ebens have no control over the Greys. The Greys do their thing and the Ebens do theirs. Is there a pecking order among the alien types? To the best of our knowledge, no cooperation exists between the different alien groups. And I think there was a war about 6,000 years ago between the Ebens and the Blondes over territorial rights to a planet somewhere. I don't know if it was out at Zeta Reticuli or around here or what. So both groups, the Ebens and the blonde humanoids, make android creatures to do work for them on different planets. That's what I understand. Androids come in many different types: insects, reptilians, grays, humanoid blondes, or men in black MIBs, and others. All have an advanced implanted brain that can operate on its own or by remote control. Ironically, we think some of these genetically engineered creatures have a higher intelligence than their creators. The Ebens and the blonde humanoids know how to mix and match genomes and DNA easily. They can make robots or androids that can be anything they want them to be. Remember, the aliens are millions of years advanced beyond us. And Sherman said the Ebens even make blonde-looking containers that the Ebens control, and the blondes make Eben-looking container bodies that the blondes control. And the Ebens genetic experimentation in Tibet, does that connect somehow to the Dalai Lama? I'm thinking about reincarnation through different beings in different cycles of life. Would that concept relate to an Eben supposedly telling an Air Force captain in 1949 that recycling of souls is the machinery of our universe? Exactly. There are only so many souls that just continuously recycle. Through life form bodies that are containers? Right, exactly. And if there are more container bodies than souls, what happens? I don't know. But souls are interconnected in some way. I think they told us that because the Ebens have been around so long, they have learned that there are only so many souls in this universe, which must be recycled. If there is a finite number of souls in the universe, and the Ebens know that, and yet we are living on a planet in which there is an exponential increase in the number of bodies, does that imply not all bodies can have souls? I guess you have a point. And if not all body containers have souls, would the Ebens and the blonde humanoids have some stake invested in souls? Like souls could be the coin of the realm, so to speak. That's possible, I guess. I never thought of it that way before. Some abductee researchers, such as Dr. Leo Sprinkle, a Wyoming psychologist, and Harvard University psychiatrist Dr. John Mack, stumbled onto what appears to be a continuity of the same Ebens, or maybe other gray types, present from human life to human life, because the same alien being comes up in past life regressions at births and at deaths. I don't know. All I do know is that the soul, when the body container dies, the soul contains or maintains or keeps some thoughts or something from that life that was just lived. It's said in the Yellow Book that the Ebens are concerned about human souls if our particular species continued on its course. They are afraid we would damage our container bodies, and that could damage the souls. Well, how would our body containers damage our souls? I don't know. I realize the containers are the human bodies, and that was why they were so concerned with what we have been doing, the wars and so forth. They are afraid that the souls will be damaged by our containers. One of the MJ-12 guys who had seen more of the Yellow Book talked to me about an analogy. He said, when you put something in a container and you pour it out, there's always some residue that remains. Something remains in that soul. So when you pass the soul on in different containers, it picks up the residues of all of the different containers it has been in, and a little of each remains and stays throughout. I guess there is an eternity. There's no end. I asked him, does the soul wear out after so many recycles? And he said, no, souls never wear out. The Supreme Being makes sure that doesn't happen, close quote. While reviewing these pages of Glimpses of Other Realities, a research colleague and attorney, Michael Pill of Shutesbury, Massachusetts, wrote to me, quote, the notion of the soul picking up residues may explain why we have memories of past lives. It may also explain why, after spending thousands of years and who knows how many wretched lifetimes trying to work out the karma from one or more evil incarnations, one can still feel the enticing charm of the dark side. The 7 deadly sins are like predators. They've got you before you realize they are there. I asked Sherman, is there a devil out there somewhere? Sherman answered, there is an evil force. Even the Ebens talk about it. There is a supreme being, and then there is the evil one, the evil entity. The Ebens are as scared of that evil entity as we are of the devil. And I asked, where is the devil? And Sherman said, I don't know, but what worries me is that if the Ebens are scared of him, I'm damn scared of him, because the Ebens can control anything. And if they believe in the same supreme being that we call God, and they say there is an evil one, then there really is a devil. Would the devil be equal to and opposite of the positive God? Are there 2 gods? Sherman answered, I don't know. You can think about that forever. There's another thing that puzzles me. The Ebens say that everything that occurs in our time span has occurred before. I guess it means we're just right in the middle of a huge big circle, and it just goes around and around again. And the way I see this is that Earth was created, and one day, 5 billion years from now, the sun is going to expand, and Earth will be engulfed and destroyed, and everything goes back into a big bang, and then everything starts over again. I ask, when the Yellow Book talked about the supreme being that created the universe, did it say anything about parallel dimensions, parallel timelines, or anything else like that? Sherman said, no, nothing. The aliens talked about the vastness of the universe, that there are life forms all over. It talks about a supreme being creating the souls and creating the containers and distributing the souls to the containers. To the Ebens, it's just basic facts. I ask, if the Ebens made us and put us here, there has to be a reason. Are we a garden growing containers for souls to be harvested for some reason? Sherman answered, well, it's another good question. All I can tell you is that one elderly man with MJ12, when I asked him that, told me, you do not want to know that. Sherman, some abductees also say that the main reason for the animal mutilations and human abductions has to do with the creation of a hybrid species. But no one knows whether the hybrids are supposed to replace the current Homo sapien container model. There is a sense that whatever the non-humans are up to, it has something to do with survival, theirs and ours. Sherman said, maybe. All I know is that the Ebens are supposed to have manipulated DNA in primates long before humans were created. So there must have been a series of experiments like Neanderthal before Cro-Magnon, and Neanderthals are gone, so who knows what is on the agenda for humans. Our planet is now in its 6th mass extinction of plants and animals because of humanity's spread around the planet, destroying and paving over so much ground that was once sustained and sustaining abundant Earth life. We are currently experiencing the worst period of die-off since that loss of the dinosaurs 65 million years ago. Scientists estimate we're now losing animals, plants, and insects at 1,000 to 10,000 times the rate prior to the 20th century, with dozens of species now going extinct every day. That means by the end of this 21st century, as many as 30 to 50% of all Earth species could be gone. Perhaps the non-human intelligences which watch this planet can see humanity's own future hanging in a balance, but will not allow humans to destroy the earth. Perhaps that is why the aliens increased their interference at nuclear missile sites and human abduction despite aggressive government efforts to keep everything about the alien presence a big secret. One fact is certain. No matter who made humans or why, life on Earth is not guaranteed. But if the chokehold on the truth were released, and the entire human family could know everything that the governments and the militaries are hiding about an alien presence on this planet that still manipulates DNA and harvests Earth life, perhaps human tribal warfare would slow down in the alien concocted Garden of Eden where a reptile was the teacher. Perhaps the unique isolation each human feels and the peculiar melancholy that a dark sky filled with stars can evoke has something to do with knowledge buried in our genes and our souls, a sensing of ancient intimacies with other beings and other worlds. Now, in this time of revolution, when the whole world will know we are not alone in this universe, our greatest challenge as a species will be to stand up unafraid before the old gods and watchers. Ultimately, there is a common bond among all life forms, ebbing and flowing on spirals of different frequencies, supported by a singular force, an invisible matrix of energy, from which everything emerges and to which everything returns. Thank you, dear Ozark Conference. Thank you very much.